Hello there, everybody! It is I, Tony, aka TTBurger88, and welcome back to another TTBurger game review. It's been a while since I've done a game review here. It's because I've been doing a lot of commentaries, and this game review is actually going to be different from my other game reviews, because usually I'm by myself making these reviews, but today I have a special guest here with me. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anthony from the Resident Evil channel, Jill Sandwich 988. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you here, Anthony. And of course, if you don't know, we're gonna be talking about the Resident Evil series. And the Resident Evil series is one of my favorite game series of all time. And I think Dark Horses were getting me into that series because they had a copy of Resident Evil. They had the demo of Resident Evil 3 on there. That's how I got into the Resident Evil series. And Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was my first Resident Evil game that I ever got. But I didn't really get the first game until afterwards, and I sadly got the crappy DualShock Greatest Hits version of Director's Cut, but we'll talk about that later. But now we're going to start things off with the original Resident Evil from 1996, and I have the original Resident Evil in the long box version, and it was actually very innovative for its time because there was Alone in the Dark, which kind of introduced the survival horror series, but Resident Evil pretty much perfected and made it even better. And I will admit now that I am not a fan of Alone in the Dark, except for Alone in the Dark, the new Nightmare. I just really could not get into the Alone in the Dark because of all the very crazy puzzles and the death traps and stuff were turn off for me. But Resident Evil doesn't really have all those cheap deaths and stuff, and that's what made it better. Now I'm going to have Anthony here to start us off with the Resident Evil.
Yeah, I mean, Resident Evil that was released for 1996. That was really ahead of its time. It did a lot of different things. It did a lot of similar things that Alone in the Dark kind of put the framework down, but Resident Evil was originally going to be in first person, so it's interesting that they chose the way they did, and now we got 7 and whatnot, so it kind of came back around. But with the first game, you got bunch of zombies and BOWs. I mean, you got Alpha Team and Bravo Team and going to investigate this mansion, inevitably, being not that there's any kind of limit to spoilers, because if you haven't played this game, it's been out for 21 years.
But I can't believe it. Already 21 years. Time sure does fly by. And and you can play as two characters in this game, Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. And in the footage you're seeing here, I'm playing as Jill Valentine, which is one of my favorite video game characters, and I know it's one of Anthony's favorite video game characters too, so kudos to that. I mean, I was a huge fan of Jill Valentine. I even had an action figure of Jill Valentine, but it's up in the attic, so I can't really find it, but that's off topic. And I'm playing as Jill because she can carry more items than Chris. Chris can only carry 6, Jill can carry 8, and she can use the lockpick to open certain doors and desks and stuff like that, and that was better. And she has this bazooka weapon too that's actually very helpful against certain enemies and stuff, like the Cerberus dogs and stuff. But Anthony, continue.
The Chris is technically kind of easier. Jill dies a bit quicker because of her health. She's not as strong as Chris, so it's kind of a give and take of different kind of statistics. So you can play through different scenarios. In Chris's scenario, you never see Barry, but Rebecca's there. In Jill's scenario, Rebecca's never there, but Barry's there. So there's different character interactions. It has a great soundtrack. Great graphics for the time.
The soundtrack is definitely the best. I don't think no Resident Evil soundtrack can top this game's soundtrack. I mean, the other Resident Evil games had a creepy soundtrack, but the soundtrack in the other games were more like a creepy action-like soundtrack. This one was like creepy as in horror-like soundtrack. So that was really badass right there. And one thing I liked about the classic Resident Evil games were the door scenes. I like the door scenes. I don't know why. It's just me. I like the door scenes a lot for some reason, because when you open the door, it loads. That I kind of like that. I mean, I kind of wish more games were like that back when they were. It showed the door and you open it and stuff. I know it's kind of like a loading scene, but I like that.
Yeah, it was kind of innovative at the time, and with the PS1 technology, we also had these. Now the voice acting isn't the best, but it's kind of funny and humorous now, but back then hearing voices from your characters, that was a big deal.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life. But Barry, didn't you say you're going back to the dining room to do some research? Why on earth are you here?
I just had something I wanted to check. Now, let's get back to searching for the lost captain and Chris, shall we?
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah.
And, the live action thing, as it was cheesy, that was, again, really creepy for the time, so, nobody saw anything like that, and taking advantage of the PS1 technology with its full motion video, and they're able to actually show a lot of stuff like that, and the CG-generated cutscenes, so it kind of was built around that kind of aspect from it, so, it's something that's really cool that they were able to actually make work with the limited technology they had, but for the time, it was really ahead of its time, so it's a little bit dated by today's standards, but as far as the cutscenes and the dialogue, but the game itself still holds up really well, and it's one of those things where it's always, it has that factor where you can always return to the game and play it, and there, you get all the different endings, and there's a lot to unlock.
There is a lot to unlock. And in fact, we should point out that this game was actually censored in North America and Europe and stuff like that. It was censored, like the opening cutscene especially was censored were like in the uncensored cutscene, which was in Japan, it was bloody and gory and it was in color. But this one wasn't black and white, and there was a scene where a zombie is eating one of your comrades' Red's head named Kenneth, and they censored that too. But for some reason they put in the DS version, but that's all. But we'll get to that later. And Resident Evil definitely, like the original Resident Evil, the non-director's cut version, it's really hard when you first play, because even if I played director's cut first, and it was easier with the auto aim, but without the auto aim, it took a little time to get used to. I remember like saving more in the original version than I did in director's cut, and I just remember I decided the best way to survive and beat the game was save a lot of first aid sprays and mixed herbs and stuff like that. I felt like that was the best thing to do. And this game also has puzzles too, like some pretty challenging puzzles. Like I pretty much memorized all the puzzles except for one puzzle in Chris's story that you have to do. But I pretty much memorized all the puzzles for Jill's story. It took some time. I think the puzzle that took some time for me to memorize was this one picture puzzle, but then it just snapped in my head of common sense. But was there something else you wanted to say?
I mean, with this game specifically, I mean, it really kind of, I mean, it was very, looking at, when we'll get into 2 in a little bit, but when we look at kind of what the rest of the sequels brought to the table, it definitely expanded more on, the enemies, the BOWs, the hunters, the snakes and stuff, and all the bosses are really cool and challenging. The puzzles themselves, by today's standards, yeah, they're not as challenging as they were back then. People would just use a guidebook if they needed help. Yeah. That's what my dad did, and that's why I have all the guidebooks. And so it's kind of cool that there's that aspect to it. So it makes you think. It's not just a shoot 'em up kind of thing. But it's more so of it's differently paced than the other games. Even the director's cut versions are, really just the same game. They just have different things added to them, and Capcom forgot to put in the uncensored stuff. So, I mean, there's always kind of like that aspect of, there is different versions for people to play, but most people have played Resident Evil 1, whether it was this version or, DC,
okay.
The DC version that came with Resident Evil 2, or just DualShock, which is on the PSN store, which is what most people play. Because it's like, because it's just what's readily available for people.
Yeah, but like, I'm trying to think what I was gonna say here, but oh yeah, like, I mean, we should also talk about like how the graphics were, like, say that the great graphics of that, but like, one of the things that I liked about Resident Evil was how many places you can explore, you go to. Like, you start off in the mansion, and then you go to like, I'm only gonna give away one other thing here, like a guardhouse and stuff like that, and there's more. There's a big variety in the levels too, and usually people would be stuck. For me, as a kid, I needed a guidebook because I would have gotten stuck. Because like there were things without the guidebook that I missed, and I remember like face palming to the point where it was right there the whole time, and I would have gotten there without the guidebook. Why did that happen? But But I'm older now, so it's definitely a lot different. But yeah, let's talk a little about the director's cuts here, because since they're part of Resident Evil 1, we was talking to them. I first owned the DualShock version, but then I played the Black Label version at my cousin's house, and I found out that the music was different and stuff. And I figured, oh man, this music's better. I mean, I want the actual soundtrack, not this crappy DualShock soundtrack that sounds like a chipmunk playing a violin or something like that. But like, one thing I liked about Director's Cut was the autoing feature, because it makes it easier and stuff like that. But that's not really the most important thing. But instead, since it's the director's cut, I was hoping it'd be like more cutscenes, stuff like that. But of course, they forgot to add the uncensored cutscenes, like how Anthony said here. But what we get in its place is two different modes here: training and advanced. Training is pretty much an easier mode of standard. So you have more enemies, you have less enemies and more ammo, and they're easier to kill. While advanced enemies are more spread throughout the mansion, and there's different camera views, and you have different costumes, and you'll probably get killed in one chomp if you're not careful. And
advanced mode also has different items, because advanced and arrange are like the same thing, which is what I learned recently, because I always thought they were different, but they're the same difficulty level. They just called it arranged in the DualShock.
Yeah,
but advanced has like harder enemies, smarter enemies, smarter hunters, more enemies on screen, all that stuff,
and different cameras.
Different camera angles. Yeah,
because like it's actually interesting with the director's cut DualShock guide that I have. It followed the walkthrough for advanced mode or arranged mode, so it was hard to find certain items, because like it was just. It's like we got through most of the game. We realized we missed this one item. We had to go all the way back to the mansion to get it. And I was like, it was right there. We didn't even need that. But the main problem that I had with the DualShock version was that god-awful soundtrack. Why did they change the soundtrack? I'll never know. But what were your thoughts on that soundtrack, Anthony?
I mean, it was terrible. They definitely didn't. I don't know why they. I mean, maybe it was just a different vision, or someone else came in and was like, "Oh, this might work better." I really don't know. I mean, if you play it, you play it. I mean, you can always turn the music down in the game, but it doesn't have the same atmosphere as the other ones. There's some good soundtracks on that one, or some good songs off the soundtrack rather, but it's not as good as the original, and it definitely does affect the overall kind of aesthetic of the game as far as creepiness, and instead of listening to just kind of god-awful renditions of what they thought was good. So
yeah, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's my motto.
Yeah, especially with the soundtrack. There's nothing wrong with it, so. Yeah.
But of course, I know there was a Saturn version too, but I don't own a Sega Saturn, but I don't know anything about it. But I know that the load time. I know from what I heard in the Saturn version, the load times are longer. Graphics look a little more washed out than they did in the PS1 version, and there's a battle mode, which
I played that. I own it, and I didn't notice the load times. The graphics definitely aren't as good as PS1, but. Yeah, there's the battle mode, which is just like exclusive to Saturn, which is kind of cool, which is worth playing through to unlock. But yeah, the load times are, I don't know, maybe they are a little bit slower. I never really noticed though. If they are, you don't really notice them. It's rare. It's a rare copy actually. It goes for insane amounts of money. If you just want the disc, you have to drop like $40-50. If you want the case, you're easily spending $90 to $100 if you're trying to find it complete. So it's not cheap. But if you're a fan of the first game, and that one, it's just like the original. It doesn't have the uncensored stuff.
I heard some copies were uncensored actually, but
that might be the case. But for the US, it's not. The PC version, which I recently got the other day, actually has the uncensored everything, the color, cutscene, everything. So that's the one US version of that game that is uncensored. The DS version as well, which has like the first-person views kind of deal.
It's got this remix soundtrack of the original soundtrack. It's got like a little remix mix soundtrack.
That one was kind of cool. That's like how they should have done it, like the first time. Like if you're gonna remix the soundtrack, at least do it like that, where it's like the same notes, just like sounds different.
They have the remix soundtrack in the little Wesley's Report DVD at the beginning, and I got that copy. I got that thing actually. It's lying around here somewhere in my room, and I have that. So I was like wondering, is that the Second Floor Mansion theme? And then it turns out it is just a little remix version of it.
Yeah, and that one had that version had you can play it with like the different puzzles. I like set the puzzles up differently so you can use your touchscreen and you can just play it through originally, which is cool, and that looks cool, on the DS. That's the reason why I got one back in the day, and just to play that and Mario Kart, and that was it. Those are the only two games I own on DS.
Yeah, I mean, but honestly though, Resident Evil DS was kind of wasn't that great for me. It didn't have that charm or anything that the original Resident Evil had when it first came out. Just it was washed out and stuff that like it was really washed out. There was some of the voice setting was different and it was a little worse. Like take Richard's voice, which Richard is a character in the game, and his voice sounds worse. And some of the screen things like with the knife and stuff those. I mean, I know you like those, but I personally did not like them. I thought they were a waste of time. And again, it was censored, but you got Kenneth's head though, which basically wasn't really anything special. But like,
yeah,
I mean, you were able to skip the door scenes too. There, people like you're able to skip the door scenes by pressing the A button. But then again,
yeah, it's mostly for people that just you can't find a PS1, you don't feel like getting that, so you just play that version. And it's for newer people. That was like the whole deal with that. It was like 10 years of Resident Evil. They put that out. I guess it made sense, for people that couldn't easily play it. That's a way to play it, I guess. And so, it works. For some people it worked, for other people it didn't, but
I was surprised that they're able to get the opening cutscene in there. So sure, it's compressed down and stuff because the DS is because of the capabilities of the DS and stuff. But I was surprised they were able to get that cutscene in there. But
yeah.
But yeah, like
the whole game really. Yeah, like they got it shrunk down to disc or a card.
Yeah, one weird thing is that for the zombies, the default blood color is green for some reason. I don't know why they chose green for the default blood color, but that's just a minor thing.
You can change it too.
Yeah, I know, but that's just a minor thing. But they do have some new puzzles there too, like in there. But the new puzzles are just pretty much they're way too easy and kind of a waste of time.
Yeah, they didn't do too much for me, but I mean, like I said, it's like if you just want to play the game kind of like how it normally was, you have that option. So for older players that might want to play something new, you can play the new rendition of it. For people that haven't played it before, they could just play the original mode. So it kind of has everything.
We should also mention that there is a Resident Evil remake on GameCube, but since that didn't come out right around this time, we'll wait till later to talk about that. Because I feel like it's its own game pretty much, except it's a remake, but it didn't come out around the same time. But the reason why we're talking about the DS one, because the DS one is pretty much supposed to be like a port of the PlayStation game and stuff, so that's why we talked about it. But we'll talk about that later. What would you give each version of Resident Evil Resident Director's Cut and stuff, like before we go to Resident Evil 2? Do you have like a rating you would give them?
I'm personally not too big on number ratings, but for the sake of your show, I'll say, the first Resident Evil, 10 out of 10. Obviously, it's just a classic game. It's it's not my favorite Resident Evil, but it's not gonna diminish my rating. The director's cut, again, the first director's cut version, 10 out of 10, because it's the same exact thing, but it has the extra stuff that's really cool. The second release of that, and plus you got the Resident Evil 2 demo, which was a big deal, so that's definitely 10 out of 10 shit right there. And the next one with the rendition of it,
the DualShock one?
Yeah, the DualShock, I'd have to say maybe like, I don't know, 7. Just because like it was more so of the same. It was the reason why they released it was number one, it was DualShock for the controller, and it was a standalone director's cut. The main reason why people got the other director's cut was because of the Resident Evil 2 demo. So they just re-released it. So it was kind of a lazy effort, but it's still the game. It's still Resident Evil. So the content of the game isn't diminished, but the soundtrack kind of is. So, but considering you had to buy it another time, 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
And then DS, I enjoyed that. So I enjoyed that a lot, actually. So I'd probably give that like an 8 or a 9.
What about the Saturn version?
The Saturn version, 10 out of 10. I think it's great. It's really it's up there with like the first Resident Evil game, where it's the same music. It's really just the extra battle mode. So those are perfect games right there.
Me, PlayStation, the original version, 10 out of 10. The Black Label Director's Cut, 10 out of 10. DualShock, I'm giving it a 4. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And Saturn version, I don't know if I don't own Saturn, but for the DS version, I'm not really a big fan of portable gaming. They tried, but it wasn't anything interesting. I give it a 6. But
Okay,
I give it a 6.
that's fair.